So, you're in a relationship and your partner doesn't do the work. It sucks, you're lonely, you don't know what to do about it. Let's talk about it. So I talk about relationships every once in a while on my various different channels, and almost every single time I talk about any aspect of relationship, this question always comes up. What happens if I'm in a relationship with somebody, I'm doing my internal work, I'm on a path to growth and self-actualization and all this sort of shit, but my partner doesn't want to do it? What do I do? This question comes up almost every single time I talk about relationships, and I've never actually fully addressed it. So this is going to be the first time I fully address how to actually handle a situation in which you are someone who is doing internal work, shadow work, whatever else it might be, and you're in a relationship with somebody that either doesn't want to do theirs, doesn't support you, is obstinate to the whole thing, or whatever. I'm going to walk you through all the different ways in which you can address this to hopefully find compromise, but also set yourself up for success if for whatever reason you can't find compromise. So let's get into it. So if you're in a relationship dynamic like this, where you are on a growth path and your partner isn't, the most important thing to do in the very beginning is to figure out why this is important to you in the first place. You want to do that so that you can articulate it to your partner in the clearest way possible for them to really understand what this means for you, what it means to you, why it's important to you, the benefits that you get, and also the downfalls that you may have experienced by not doing this prior. The whole idea behind this is you want to be able to bring your partner into your worldview as much as you possibly can. And so if you're going to do that, you first of all need to start by dealing with any part of you that may be judging them, right? Because if you go and have these conversations with your partner and it's actually like, oh, you're not good enough for me because you don't do X, Y, Z, all you're really going to do is have them dig in their heels and defend themselves rather than actually listen to what you have to say, potentially get something valuable from it and actually come to the other side and compromise with you and maybe begin some kind of growth practice or something like that. So you want to deal with any part of you that has any judgments about them so that you can open this conversation as lovingly and with as much opportunity for cooperation as humanly possible. And as you're doing that, you also really want to get clear, like I said before, on exactly why this matters to you, because that's going to help you in your conversation. The more clarity you have about what it is you want to be doing, what it is you want to be sharing with your partner, why it's important, why that is important for yourself, why it's important for the relationship dynamic, what it could potentially give you, all that sort of shit. In order for you to be able to walk into the conversation with a sense of clarity and knowing what you want to get out of it, you have to first be able to clearly articulate specifically what it is you do want out of it. And as you're doing this, you also want to clarify what some of your non-negotiables are, what some of your deal breakers are, and things that if they can't align with you, that you know that this relationship just isn't for you. And it is okay to have deal breakers like that, right? Because it's like, I will not date somebody who doesn't speak my language. If I'm talking about something that's going on with me and how I'm overcoming it and how I may need support or whatever's going on, and I'm dealing with somebody that doesn't speak my language and that doesn't understand what I'm saying and that can't really help me from within my own frame, and all they can really do is help me from frames that don't really make sense to what I'm doing and that don't fit or get in the way of what I'm trying to accomplish or anything like that, it's not really all that helpful to me. So the people that are closest to me are the people that on some level understand the work that I do on myself, understand the way that I relate to myself, and can support me from within that framework. And so it can be very difficult to have people in your life, especially somebody who you've partnered with forever, who when you bring shit to them, they will essentially not really understand exactly what you're saying, why it's important to you, how to meet you there, and how to support you from within your own framework. Now, that may not necessarily be a deal breaker for you. Sometimes alternate frameworks are really, really helpful, and that may actually be something that you find valuable. But what's important is for you to get really clear on what it is that you are looking for, what kind of relationship that you want. Find something that feels solid and stable, something that you really feel that you'd be able to thrive in. And then find those little things that without certain elements of it, like for me, if I can't communicate with somebody and they understand where I'm coming from, that's kind of a deal breaker for me. I can't partner with someone like that. I can be friends with someone like that, but I can't partner with someone like that for the rest of my life. Because every single time I try to talk about something, they're not going to know what the fuck I'm saying. And they're not going to be able to help me or understand where I'm coming from. Maybe they'll get scared about shit because they don't understand how I do things, whatever. That's non-workable for me. I'm not interested in it. So you want to both get really clear on what it is you want and what it is that you don't want. And the reason for this is because these conversations are tricky. They're scary. And you can, especially if you have any kind of like codependent or attachment issues or anything like that, When you try and have these conversations, it's very easy for your mind to pull you in multiple different directions. Like, oh, I really want this kind of relationship, and like, I'm not getting this thing. It's like, oh, but this person's really good, and no one's ever treated me this way before, and like, oh, I don't know what to do, and like, you get pulled all these different directions. But if you have a sense of clarity about what you need, what you really want, and what you're absolutely not willing to allow, it takes all those different voices in your head that are going to try and pull you in all these different directions, and it gives you solid ground to stand on. It gives you clarity. It lets you know who you are, what you want, what you're negotiating for, what you can compromise on, what you can't compromise on, and ultimately what success would look like for you and what a really good, healthy, mutually beneficial relationship would look like for you. Once you get clear on those things, you want to make sure, again, I'm just going to harp on this because it's really fucking important. It's easy to look over because a lot of people are in these dynamics where they're frustrated because their partner isn't doing the work. They're like, oh my God, if you just did the work, if you were just this different thing, I'd be happier. And that's such a fucked up way to treat somebody. It's a really fucked up way to treat somebody who you're supposed to love when you're basically saying, oh, if you were different, you'd be better. That's not a really good way to have a talk with someone that you love and want to ally with and potentially have them compromise and come over to your side of the street where it's much scarier, where they're going to have to face their shit and see a whole lot of things about them that they don't like. If you want to encourage them to come into that, you have to actually create something welcoming and inviting for them to want to go to. So that's really fucking important. Get clear on what you want, what you're able to compromise on, what you're not able to compromise on, and then make sure you're even starting this conversation with the intent of cooperation. And if you're going into this conversation without the intent of cooperation, if some part of you has already given up and thinks it's never going to work, maybe take a look at that. Maybe this has gone so far that you actually don't think you can fix it, or some part of you just has some limiting belief, some self-fulfilling prophecy, whatever. Take a look at that. But you want to get yourself in the best position possible to have this person actually hear you and want to do the things you're wanting to do. And so the more loving, the more compassionate, the more understanding you can be while you have these conversations, the better you're going to be. So the first step is to get clear on all that sort of stuff. And then you actually want to have a conversation with the person that you're wanting to align with. And be like, okay, so this is why this matters to me. This is why this is important to me. This is everything that it's given to me. This is everything I think the relationship could give us. This is everything I think this is all the ways in which I think we could benefit if we both did this together. And these are all the ways in which we might needlessly suffer if we didn't do this together. And then once you lay out your plan in a way that they can actually understand and hear, then it's a matter of truly listening to their responses. Right? Because it's like, not everybody wants to do this stuff, and people have pretty good reasons to not want to do this stuff. It's fucking scary. Like maybe you didn't do this stuff when you got into the relationship, and so you kind of flipped the script on what the relationship actually is, and now the person's like, I don't know what the fuck to do with this. Maybe they're disoriented and freaked out. Like there's a bunch of reasons for people not to want to do this stuff. And if you can go in there and be curious, like, okay, like, I see so much to gain here. I see so much good here in learning to understand ourselves and doing this kind of internal work and reprogram our minds to create whatever the fuck we want and just create a whole really beautiful internal environment. Why would somebody not want to do that? Like actually get curious about that. Because isn't it fascinating to think that all these beautiful things that you found, there's people in the world that maybe not want to do that? And there's people that you love that may not want to do that? Like for me, that's fascinating. If somebody doesn't want to do that, I want to figure out why. And if you're really curious and you're really loving and genuinely like compassionate about what the person has to say, and you keep asking questions, there's a very good chance you could get to something that they didn't know about. Maybe they're afraid of like dysregulating their emotions because they think that if they face their emotions, they'll swallow them. And then it's like, oh, that's a reasonable fear. Cool. You want to talk about that more? Because that's not necessarily the case. Or it's like, if I start facing my emotions, then I won't accomplish as much. And it's like, that's an interesting assumption. Where'd that come from? You know, like if you dig with genuine curiosity and a true desire to understand the other person, then it's very possible for you to get somewhere where you could be like, oh shit, that took both of us by surprise. We didn't know that's why you didn't want to do this stuff. But now that we know that's why you don't want to do this stuff, does that reason hold up? Do you maybe want to start looking at that? Because you don't have to live with that forever. And it's like you can ally with them. You can become cooperative with them. And this is unfortunately, still only just the best position you can put yourself in, right? Like, this isn't going to guarantee anything, because I know some people that I've explained this shit to multiple times, and they're just so stuck in their patterns. They're so in fear of whatever would happen if they looked at their shadow that their minds just won't allow them to do it. And it's like, fine, cool, that's great. Up until I did shadow work, that's how my mind behaved. It's like, great. Your mind will not let you see stuff until it's ready to let you see stuff. And you have to respect that. And you have to respect that if this person just simply isn't ready, then it's like, that's fine. They don't really have any control over that. Your mind breaks and allows you in more awareness and ability to do this stuff when it happens. If you look back at your process, you probably didn't be like, oh yeah, I think I'm gonna go look at my shadow now. Like, I'm gonna go face all of my fears because I got nothing fucking better to do. Like, nobody does that. Most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, people who genuinely practice shadow work do it because they were fucking forced to. Because shit got so bad, so out of whack, that they had to reanalyze their behavior, their relationship to themselves, and their relationship to everything in their reality. So if you can have some respect for what it takes to get somebody started on a path like this, and genuinely appreciate and respect the fact that that just hasn't happened to some people, and that's totally okay, and you can love them no matter what happens, that will allow you the best position possible to have these conversations in a way that will allow compromise, but it will not guarantee it. So another thing you really want to do, and this is the hardest part, right? I don't expect you to get this all nailed down, especially if you love somebody and have any like codependency issues, or maybe you have kids together or whatever it might be. But you also want to be as accepting and loving as humanly possible if it does arise that they can't compromise and they don't want to do this thing with you. Because if you can accept even the fact that this may not turn out the way that I want, I may find out that we have some misaligned values that we just cannot compromise on. And if I'm going to become who I want to become, and if I'm going to have the life I want to have, I'm not going to find it here. Like, that may be what happens. And if you can orient yourself towards that as a blessing as well, because either you're going to find a way to compromise with your partner, it's going to make things 10 million times better than they would have been normally, or you're going to find out that essentially you've been barking up the wrong tree. This person isn't going to compromise, isn't going to align with the values. And so what you can do is align yourself more with those values so that you can eventually attract somebody who will meet you there later on in life. So either way you win. No matter what, you become more aligned with yourself. It's just a matter of whether or not this is the person that you get to have the relationship of your dreams that you cooked up in the first part. It's either this person or it's whoever you find as a result of realizing that this person wasn't it. So no matter what, you win. So if you can go in with that attitude, it'll help you stay humble, it'll help you stay clear, it'll help you stay grounded, it'll help make sure that your emotions don't pull on you in too many different directions and make you confused and hard to figure out what's going on. Plus, you'll have the grounding of knowing exactly what you want, what you can compromise, and what you can't, and this will all put you in the best position possible to have the conversation. So then after you actually have these conversations, you've cleared yourself of your emotions to the best of your ability, because this shit's sensitive, like I said. And you've gotten clear on what your non-negotiables are, what you need, what you can compromise on. You've had the conversation. If the person aligns with you, then fantastic. You win. You have accomplished something incredible. Good for you. However, if the person doesn't compromise, then it's like you have some things to consider. It's like, okay, are my non-negotiables, the things I simply cannot accept, are those going to be here without any way of adjusting them? If so, you got to be really fucking honest about that. And then it's like, okay, and the next phase is like, okay, like my non-negotiables are fine. Those aren't here. Great, wonderful, that's cool. However, the things I have to compromise on, maybe you have to compromise them a little bit more than you want to. Maybe you don't actually like the degree to which you have to compromise, because compromise is fantastic. However, if you lean over to compromise more than you actually want to, that will eventually create resentment. Because resentment happens when you do more than you want to for a prolonged period of time. Eventually, you will learn to resent the thing that you feel is causing you to do more than you actually want to. It's stretching you thin without filling you back up in the meaningful ways, and so eventually you will start to resent the thing that is draining on your heart and soul without filling you back in the ways that you need. So pay attention to the middle ground, the compromises, because there's a degree to which you can compromise that you'll actually feel good about. It's like, oh, cool, I can actually accept that. I didn't realize that was an option. That's totally fine. And there's other times where it's like, oh God, if I were to compromise on that, like imagine 10, 20 years of compromising like that. That would kind of suck. And then there's other compromises where you're just clear that that's not going to work. So if the non-negotiables, they're non-negotiable, pretty easy. But the compromise is you still have to look at how much you have to compromise in order to make the thing work, how much you want to compromise in order to make things work, and whether or not you actually want to do that. And for the things that they can compromise on, wonderful, just align with that shit. And so like I said, it's complex, because there's a lot you have to do in order to get clear in the first place. There's a few different permutations of these conversations that you can have, and they will change depending on your skill level, depending on how open and calm and loving. That will actually tremendously impact how well the conversation goes. But sometimes you just got a motherfucker that just doesn't want to do this shit, and that's totally okay. And being honest with that will bring you more into wholeness with yourself. It'll bring you more into wholeness with that which you desire. It'll even get you more aligned with the kind of person that you actually do want to be in a relationship with. So all of these things that I've given you today, these are my best ways of positioning you for success, as well as acknowledging that success is not even close to guaranteed. And that even if you don't succeed in this one particular area, you will succeed somewhere else. So if your partner doesn't do this type of work, that's totally okay. There are ways out. There are ways to alchemize this and turn this into everything that you want to do. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to let me know. I can answer in other videos. If you want more support with this, I have a free fucking Discord channel that has a channel dedicated just to relationships and these kinds of dynamics. So if you want a whole community to talk to about this sort of stuff for free, there's going to be a link below. You can join it. And if you don't know shadow integration, I can teach you that shit for free. Got a link to that below. So I can help you with whatever it is you need. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know if you need support, whatever it is. I got your back. I'm Chris Roscoe. I love you, and I'll see you next time.